The questions up for discussion include, but are not limited to, what are the experiences of musicians and the consumers around the impact and innovation of this industry, and how does industry view innovation?
Oh, right, okay, I get to kick off. I'm not going to say a huge amount, but I do think that the scene has changed considerably over the years. I think if one looks back, not even 10 years, the music industry was pretty slow, as far as one can see, to adapt to a changing digital landscape. But from what I've seen, and UK Music have produced a very useful document here called A Year of Innovation. They really set out, I think in a really helpful way, in terms of use for other purposes, advertising, TV, film, and so on. There are developments like Eagle Eye. There's a whole way of educating people in terms of streaming and how and demonstrating how, for instance, an album is made. As an example they give of Newton Faulkner really showing right from the word go as to how an album is made. Now that's highly educative because it means that just as Rock the House is trying to do, which is much more of a carrot than a stick, it's trying to demonstrate the value of intellectual property and how important it is to observe it. I think that's one of yours.
It is.
Yes. I'm glad to say I don't have to charge back down the corridor. So that's, I think a very important development. There's been experiments. I mean, there was a big live stream, I think, by Blur on Twitter. I think that no longer does the excuse subsist that, oh, it's all too difficult to get a license from the relevant rights holders. This is really the music industry having really changed very quickly over a period of time. I think the two other big developments are the Copyright Hub, which derived, is one of the few good things in my view, to derive from the Hargreaves report. And that's a very significant database for the future, and it includes everything across the board effectively in terms of being accessible to people who want to take a music license. I think it's a very well put together website. It tells you who to contact, it tells you who owns the rights, etc., and then puts you forward through into the relevant collecting society who can help license a particular piece of music or pieces of music that you're interested in. I think the other really important area is also another database, and I'm sure that the Copyright Hub will link, if it doesn't already, with the Global Repertoire Database. And the great thing about that is that that is going to be pan-European, effectively. As you can see, London, UK, has a formidable music industry, and it has a formidable opportunity in terms of being the hub for licensing, pan-European licensing, which I think it will be of benefit to all our creative industries. We're in danger, a little bit in danger, of always being a bit behind the curve with our copyright laws. And by that I mean that at the moment there is a series of exceptions which are proposed, particularly for private copying. And if we're not careful, what we're doing is we're sort of legislating in an analog way for a digital world, because already the music industry and the audio-visual industry have started to build in a permitted numbers of copies that you're entitled to make as a result of buying whatever material you're buying or licensing. And what worries me is if we're too rigid about the copyright exception, then that's actually going to diminish a variety of ways in which people, consumers, businesses can use that material. Whereas perfectly satisfactory commercial and consumer arrangements are coming down the track. So I think that's the final point I would make.
But actually, I'm following Tim, and I've actually got a very, very similar thing to say about some of these issues as Tim does. I think, as Tim pointed out, I think we are in danger of still talking in terminology that was five years ago. One of the, so I should probably explain first of all sort of who the Alliance for Intellectual Property is. We're an umbrella lobbying group of 24 trade associations that have an interest and whose businesses are underpinned and depend on intellectual property being able to monetize and commercialize that IP. And that includes obviously music industry, but also the audiovisual, video games, publishers, branded, manufactured goods, designers, all of those across the copyright and trademark spectrum. And what I think we are seeing now is that the UK does enjoy one of the most developed markets of legal online content really in the world, probably only sort of second to the US. And competition is fierce, as it should be in these very well working and running competitive markets. And I absolutely agree with Tim. The debate that we've got at the moment around the exceptions is they're a very blunt tool for actually to deal with what are actually business-to-business commercial negotiations and deals that need to be done. And in terms of the number of services, we launched last year a portal really more for consumers, so it's not a hub-based model, which is obviously much more business-to-business targeted, but for consumers, called the Content Map. One of the things that we were coming into Parliament and when we were talking to MPs about the problems that industry faced, one of the charges back to us as well, but surely it's because people, there are no legal services, so that's why people are going to pirate sites. And we knew that wasn't the case. We knew that there was an awful lot of legal online services out there. So we put together a Content Map, and it's a portal. You can go there, whether it's an ebook that you're looking to download, or whether it's music that you want to stream, or video games, or even sports broadcasts. You know, if you want to watch a football match, and it lists all the services. There are over 150 services listed on the Content Map. So to my mind, that shows a really well working market. And what I think is great about how the UK system is working at the moment is that there are, whether you want to fill your boots and just look at all the type of music out there, or whether you want a much more specialised service, that's there as well. So looking at the questions up for discussion that David ran through, how industry helping itself and how can parliamentarians help? Well, how is industry helping itself? Well, we're innovating. Industry is always innovating. These are our consumers. We want to make sure that they get what they want when they want it. But the important thing is obviously that the creator and the rights holder, the people who are investing in those services and in that content, actually can get paid. One example that touches on the private copying exception, is actually in a different sector to music, is ultraviolet in the audiovisual sector. Now, that's a cloud-based digital office service. It will enable people to store and share digital copies of video entertainment. Really good example of the market delivering, not regulation, not legislation, but companies giving people what they want. Now, we're very, very concerned that this private copying exception, being a very blunt tool, will chill investment in services like ultraviolet. But actually, ultraviolet actually goes further than the exception, which is great because it enables you actually to share with your family members as well, and not just yourself. So I think we're very concerned that the government is not really looking at what industry is actually already doing in this area. There's obviously deals that are done in the music industry as well, and the Amazon Rip service, etc. But the important thing is that consumers are getting what they want, but the creators and the investors receive the remuneration. And as I sort of said, a weakened copyright framework will harm those commercial deals. There may well be winners, but we strongly feel that there will be the tech companies who haven't invested in the content, which is driving the demand for their services. So what is holding back innovation? We would strongly argue it's piracy and it's the proliferation of pirate sites, which is actually what's holding back innovation, not anything to do with copyright or a slow-moving industry sector. We can invest in the most amazing sites and amazing services out there, but if they're beaten constantly, in search rankings by illicit sites, then it's those illicit businesses that are losing out, and consumers will lose out as well. So how can parliamentarians support the evolution of our sectors? And this goes across the board, and not just music. But we need to ensure that, we need government to ensure that those who invest in the content and create an innovative way in which the content can be accessed are protected from those who seek to rip off businesses and consumers and undermine the economy. And that does mean, like, industry is doing a lot of work in this area, which I won't go into in too much detail now, but we do need government to work with us to make sure that advertising does not appear on pirate sites, that you can't use your payment, your Visa or your MasterCard to pay and buy goods and services on these pirate sites. And we do need to work with Google to work out a way in which they don't appear in search rankings. And I know there have been some great steps forward with Google, but sites that are subject to 97A blocking actions by the courts, that the courts have actually said are infringing sites, are still appearing on the search rankings. So there's still tweaks, there's still work has been done, but there's still...
In a very short period of time, we launched this year, we were able to achieve quite a lot. We have the highest ranking music streaming service on App Store and Google Play. We're consistently 4.5 stars. We have managed to license library of more than 22 million tracks and put them into our system, from the likes of Universal, Sony, Merlin, Beggars, Ingress. There's dozens, if not hundreds more, that I would love to list here, but probably it's going to take the rest of this session. And very importantly, we build a user base of more than 600,000 users in the UK, only having available an iOS and Android app. We're working on the rest, but I'll come back to that in a second. We also have attracted millions in foreign investment into the UK and built a team of 30 that have been working very hard on the product, and I only use this opportunity to thank them. You know, some of them are sitting right there for very hard work and sacrifice that they put into it. So why and how we were able to achieve this in such a short period of time, and also why did we enter into this very busy, quite competitive space? Because I think that we have an answer to a key problem, and the key problem is not piracy. Piracy does exist as a response to the fact that we have very little compelling offer at a compelling price point that consumers feel engaged with and attracted to. There are lots and lots of products, but it's clear that people are not going for it because of a very simple thing, that if you're on mobile, which is the new generation kind of device of choice, you right now have a free service, and then you have to pay 10 quid a month. We've done research in July this year, and we've asked a plethora of questions. It wasn't very sort of, head-on, so the data is very, very robust. More than 8 out of 10 UK consumers say that 10 quid a month is just too much for them to pay. We need to give people a tiered proposition that would allow them to start paying an amount of money that they can afford and they feel is fair and attractive and compelling for them. We believe that music is valuable, and more people will consume it, but more people will pay for it if the product exceeds their expectations and the price is right. That's why our product offers beautiful, amazing user interface for that. But very importantly, we have an entry price point of £1 a month. So on the mobile, you can start using a subscription service for £1 a month. And for this, Bloom FM will give you access to 20 songs at a time that you can stream or store and take with you on and offline, as well as radio stations to kind of inspire you and find music that you didn't know existed or you didn't know you will love. We also have tiered proposition that gives positive and very enticing upsell reason. So if 20 tracks is not enough for you, then you can go for 200 tracks, and that will be £5 a month. And if that's not enough, you can go for well-rehearsed and plethora of services exist in the space, £10, which gives you all you can eat on-demand streaming. Some people call us a £1 subscription service. They're wrong. I wish I could take credit for this, but what we have created, three-tiered proposition, is a well-rehearsed and really well-honed tool that other industries have tested before us. Just take a look at mobile operators. Take a look at ISPs. Of course, they started with broadband, which was costing X. But what you have right now is option 1, option 2, option 3 with BT, and every other service is doing a very similar thing. Why is it important? It gives people a choice of kind of choosing which level they would like to go for. It gives them flexibility, and it also gives us as an industry an ability to broaden our appeal and not put people in front of binary yes or no, but to let them choose and also move from one level to another as and if they feel that it is right. The mass market, or the casual music consumer, if you like, have been so far very much untapped because of the reasons that I've described, and it's a price point. We have excellent relationships with the rights owners, and I want to thank a lot of them for us being able to have this massive catalog of 22 million tracks. I genuinely believe that our innovativeness, our risk-taking, our creativity, and our ability to attract capital to develop businesses like this is a massive asset, not only to the music industry, but to the UK music fan. I think that if we focus on them, we will deliver growth. I think that kind of the main lesson, and please indulge me in quoting Kevin Spacey, who I think said something that was an amazing summary of the journey that we have gone through in the last couple of years. The audience wants the control, they want the freedom. We have demonstrated that we have learned the lesson that music industry did not learn. Give people what they want, when they want it, in the form they want it in, at a reasonable price, and they're more likely to pay for it rather than steal it. Well, I trust that together we can actually prove Mr. Spacey wrong. But we need to work together, and we need a lot of support from the industry and from a lot of people sitting in this audience to make this happen. We have very big plans for 2014. We're finishing the web app that looks astonishing and as striking and innovative as our iOS and Android app. Windows Mobile, Sonos, just to name a few things. There's also some interesting stuff that they're doing with the bees that you're going to be able to see in a short period of time. And I really do hope that with your support we can turn Bloom FM into a massive, massive success.
So I would argue that the relationship between the two groups, tech and music, is significantly less adversarial than it has been in the past, characterized by perhaps less mutual wariness. This change is occurring as opportunities are becoming evident. So in the first place, more media, it's a commonplace now to say that more media is available than at any time before. Unknowns can find wider audiences and become knowns. Established artists can find new revenue streams. Forgotten artists can find their works brought back to life through media like YouTube. Digital is also fueling growth. A few data points here. The IFPI reported growth in its revenue in 2012 for the first time in over a decade. The BPI annual report showed that more than half of their revenues were coming from digital. And Nielsen and Billboard reported that in 2012, music purchases grew by 3.1% from the previous record high in 2011. Digital is clearly driving growth in these sectors. And Google is playing a role here. We have a vested stake in this. On YouTube, more than 4,000 rights holder partners around the world are using our Content ID technology, a fingerprinting technology, through which you can give us a reference file. Every time someone uploads something which matches that file, we follow the rights holder's instruction, either monetize, block, or monitor. Most choose to monetize, and Content ID is now responsible for a third of monetized views on the platform. YouTube alone is currently sending hundreds of millions of dollars a year annually to restaurants. We also have Google Play, where we sell songs. We have Google Play All Access Music, a locker service that is licensed, and nearly 1 million apps to legitimate services like Bloom FM, like Netflix, Pandora, Spotify, and others. And we're working on further technologies. To give you one example, wearable computing is the hot thing at the moment. And recently we made known our intention to make Google Play Music available through Google Glass. We have a pair of Google Glasses here. If anyone is interested in playing around with it afterwards, come and talk. Copyright infringement remains an issue, but evidence is clearly showing that more legitimate access reduces the amount of infringement. For example, piracydata.org tracks the most pirated films each week, and the top pirated films are generally those which are not available through legitimate sources online. Spotify's research on illegal downloading in Sweden and the Netherlands shows a similar trend, and on and on. So I think to move to my second point, it is important, actually let me pause to address some of the points that were made earlier about what to do about piracy. I just want to note that Google has invested a tremendous amount, not only in Content ID, which has turned from merely an anti-infringement measure to a moneymaker, but in its own notice and takedown systems. We process 4 million requests for takedown per week. I will note that this is less than 1%. This represents less than 1% of all the content we index. And we've built special tools for rights holders to enable them to give us bulk requests. And I believe the VPI, if it's not number one, it is among the top. It's probably number one in requesters. So we are working closely with rights holders, investing money in anti-infringement technology to fight piracy, even as we continue to believe that the major front in this war is to make sure that people have the right services, the availability at the right price. To move to the second point, that IP policy is not going to take so. Too frequently it's seen as a trade-off between one or the other, and in the current climate it can be seen as an attack on the artist to call for broader flexibility in copyright exceptions. However, Google's argument here is that flexibility in a copyright regime, a well-drawn copyright regime, can enable the innovation which will create benefits for the rights holder community. Our users care about music content and other creative content, and so we work very well with these industries. You want to see more innovation for more services to emerge. It is no coincidence that platforms such as eBay, Amazon, Google, YouTube, and many others were founded in the US, where fair use and the safe harbor provisions in the DMCA provided the legal certainty for these services. Now the data backs this up. Josh Lerner of the Harvard Business School did a study looking at what the effect of a legal decision in the Cablevision case, which clarified copyright law, clarified that a certain sort of copying was legal, what effect that had on investment, and he found that it led to investment of 1.3 billion in cloud computing services in the US, which far overshot what was happening in Europe. Similar studies of cases in France and Germany have shown that the opposite effect is true, that creating greater uncertainty, or in fact limiting this sort of copying, reduces VC investment. So we too would like to future-proof copyright law. We think that there is a balanced way to draw the law that will benefit both the tech and the creative sector, and we look forward to conversation with the creative sector and other stakeholders about what that should be. Thank you.
Kerry McCarthy MP, and I chair the Performers Alliance, which is basically Equity, Musicians Union, Writers Guild, their sort of representation in Parliament. So from the point of view of people who actually work in the entertainment industry, and obviously the huge issue is how can people make a living working in that industry these days. We had 3 guys from Spotify coming in to give a presentation, which was actually really interesting a couple of weeks ago. And the thing you said about the deals with the record labels really does seem absolutely key to whether artists can make a living, because as I understand it, Spotify keep 30% of their income either from ads or subscriptions. 70% goes out to the rights holder or whatever. With the best record labels, they'll split that 50-50 with the artists, but with a lot of the others, they will give them a minimum amount. You know, it'd be the same sort of deal that they have with CD and record distribution. So they would actually be paying, apparently, for packaging and distribution costs, and the artist will pay that same element as if they'd sold a record, a physical record. So that will be where the musicians' union, I think, is coming from, is the record labels renegotiating better, or artists renegotiating better deals with the labels, so that they do get the again is 50/50 split.
Can I just add something to that? Many artists aren't in a position where they can do that because they don't have the money to threaten to take a label to court in order to get them to sit around the table. And that's what it would take for a lot of artists to get their deals changed. I mean, if you're a big artist and you're already doing well, then it's not a problem. But for the sort of medium and small artists, it is a problem.
But maybe with the new deals, it becomes accepted practice in the market when people are signing up for new deals.
There should
in
be a
a better
minimal
position
royalty,
than
yeah.
their
There should be a minimal royalty that they all sign up to. Because it would only be good for the labels as well to be seen to be doing the right thing by the artists. And that would also help fight piracy because, you know, at the moment a lot of young kids think, well, the artists aren't being paid any way, so why should we bother with legal services? You know, so there's a lot to be said for it.
Can I introduce Mike Weatherley, the IP advisor to the Prime Minister? You may invite Mike to say what you think.
Yeah, there's 2 points that have just got so far that just sort of on the back of. One is there's no point having enforcement of IP if we haven't got alternative models, and that was brought up, and I think what you said, Simon, about how where there isn't a legal alternative, people tend to want to go to that. That's probably true. But I was also interested when you mentioned about going in cars and things like that. At the moment, the download or the models that are pretty much prevalent at the moment on mobile phones and so on, when it gets into people's homes is probably the big change of where it is, because most people still want that physical product of some sort. And I'm just wondering if you guys think that the models need to change then further before we can do enforcement, particularly with the advent of 4G and the superfast broadbands that be into most homes very shortly. Does that change the way that the household consumes music? Does it? Because at the moment it's pretty much specialised into those people who are very technologically adapt with their phones and use that as their media centre, rather than their homes as their media centre. So I wonder if it's 4G, superfast broadband, or an additional separate model that might come in the next year or two to enable that to happen.
Tim, may I invite you to?
Yes, okay. I think we'll get on to that. I represent Robbie Williams, among others, but also represent a number of smaller acts. And I've got to tell you that it's damn difficult out there. It's difficult enough for Robbie Williams, whose revenues from recorded music have plummeted. And he has a #2 album currently in the charts, but his revenues are nothing like they were 5 or 6 years ago. I think I have a very simple view about our industry. There's only 2 things that count: the artist and the consumer. And if we can have those 2 really happy, we've got a great business. And at the moment, we have all sorts of pressures, all sorts of people fighting their cause. We've got old businesses, because they were old businesses, the recorded music business, still clinging on to its analog business, if you like. And it hasn't been very good at embracing digital. It's certainly started, but it hasn't. The 70 platforms that you're talking about, I'm pretty sure that half of them are moribund, actually, but we can argue about that. But certainly, revenues are not going up. They're going down. And they're going down incredibly quickly. And it's going to take quite a while before digital revenues come anywhere close to replacing physical. We're fortunate, of course, because with artists, and especially if you have an artist like Robbie Williams, he puts bums on seats. He makes a lot of money from touring. And we have to think of artists in that sort of round, if you like, of not just revenues from recorded music, but how that's going to affect an artist's ability to sell tickets to their concerts and so on. So there's a whole plethora of things involved in actually making an artist a viable career, if you like. Now, I think one of the things that has certainly arisen with digital is the plethora of new revenue, of YouTube channels, for instance, artist YouTube channels, which record companies, in my experience, have little to do with. They tend to be run by artists or their representatives, and they're starting to be quite profitable. But these are things that artists have really got to think about, have got to work on, in order to make up for the revenue that they're losing on recorded music. And the thing about digital is so damn onerous. The amount of content that artists have to make now is crazy. I mean, they're tweeting, they're making stuff for Facebook, they're making stuff for YouTube, and so on, and most of it they get no return on at all, other than a sort of vague, oh well, it's making me better known. I mean, it is unbelievable how much stuff is made. When I came into the industry in '65, Christ, we put out a single in a paper bag. Believe you me, they ain't making a living out of recorded music. That's a fact. So record companies and publishers really do have to think about artists and consumers.